pleasure to introduce both Scott and Aaron. We're going to tackle sports in the news. And fellas, I'd like to begin by sharing a press release from OWN, from the Oprah Winfrey Network. It begins by saying the Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN, and Michael Sam's representation announced Friday night that the documentary series that was set to feature the first openly gay NFL player has been postponed. Now, I will read more of this in a moment, but I'd like to get your reaction to this. What do you guys think?
I think, I'm glad that they postponed it, because if he just wants to play football, he should probably worry about playing football.
Yes.
Making a team. When you first sent this over to me, I wanted to see what the percentages were for a 6th and 7th rounder to make the Rams. And everything I found was that 73% of the guys make the team. Of the ones that don't make the team are the ones that either don't have the talent and ability, or they do stuff outside of the football field that distracts.
So what percentage of, you did 6th and 7th round picks, so you would expect it to be higher for the 6th and the 7th, but particularly the late 7th round pick. But, and you found that for 6th and 7th round picks overall, on the Rams specifically,
yep.
It's about 78%, almost 80% make the team?
Yep, 73%.
73%. Okay.
Make the team to see at least one game.
Okay, make the team for at least one game. It's not saying that they actually. You could. I guess if you make one game, you're officially an NFL player. but okay, so it's going to be for a late 7th round draft pick if the entirety of 6th and 7th are 73%. A late 7th round draft pick, you would do it just a normal extrapolation. You'd say that his chances are somewhere around 50-50.
Yeah, definitely.
Somewhere around 50-50. And that's without any extraneous kinds of issues playing into the equation.
Yeah, I think the highest percentage I saw was like 85%. The Packers had like 85% of their 6th and 7th rounders make the team. Mm-hmm. And then the lowest one was 69%. Make the team.
But again, that's 6th and 7th rounders, and this guy is a late 7th rounder, so he's not going to be the average there, or even the St. Louis average. So it's somewhere right between 50 probably and 55% is his chances of making the team. So at this very point, he's not an NFL player, is he?
Fringe, at best.
Yeah, well, not easy. Won't be an NFL player unless he actually makes the team and gets to play. Is he the first openly gay player in the NFL?
To the media. Openly gay to the media and willing to make a bigger deal about it. The tight end from
there's been many gay players. The most famous of them is the tight end for the Washington Redskins.
Yep, I forget his name.
Yeah, they've done a documentary on him. I forget his name too, but he was, for everything that every teammate and every competitor playing with him and against him had to say, is guy was loved. He was really considered a good guy, a great player, a good guy, and extraordinarily well received. The only difference between him and Michael Sams is that he really was a football player. And the fact that he was homosexual was irrelevant to his playing football. With Michael Sam, it's the only thing that seems to be relevant.
At the moment, yeah. Part of that comes from the not playing games. I think Michael Sam has the ability to be an NFL player. But I think if he decides that he wants to pursue a reality series
as a homosexual crusader. Yeah. If his goal is to be a homosexual crusader, then the likelihood of him being a successful football player goes down immeasurably.
Well, I think you gotta look at this two ways. Do you want to be a football player, or do you want to be a gay rights activist? Because that's what the NFL is going to look at it. They want football players.
Yeah, exactly.
They want football players. Chris Cooley up from Minnesota, very pro-gay marriage, everything like that. And he, after he got cut by the Vikings, they told him, he filed a lawsuit against him saying that it was his belief, his outside belief that led to him being cut, which isn't, the stats don't back that up. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's an old punter. Old punters are a dime a dozen.
He wasn't even a terrible punter. He was just overpaid greatly.
That's part of the NFL deal too, isn't it?
Yeah, he was an average punter. His statistics lined up with the average of the NFL.
Right. So he's an average punter that was paid more than the average punter in a league that has a salary cap, and he was aging.
Correct.
Yep.
Right. And punters have a tendency to irritate players. Remember when Peyton Manning went off him on his damn punter?
No, it was the kicker. It was the kicker, yeah.
Oh, the kicker, yeah, the damn kicker, yeah. It's kickers and punters that have a tendency to irritate because if a kicker and punter just isn't quiet and keeps his mouth shut and just kicks and punts, it is a major irritant within the locker room that don't much like kickers and punters anyway. And so if you're going to be a social advocate as opposed to just a kicker and punter, you're typically not welcome in the NFL unless you are an extraordinarily good kicker and punter, and they'll put up with it.
Well, what are they gonna? Are you gonna pay a guy $4 million to give you average stats? Or $2 billion
as a punter?
As a punter?
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't even pay a punter $1 million to give you average stats. Whatever the league minimum is what you're going to pay an average punter.
And if you're the Rams, if your 7th round draft pick decides to have a documentary camera following them around, or is it? Yeah. What does that tell you? That tells you that football is very secondary.
That is correct. This is another news release thing. After careful consideration and discussion with the St. Louis Rams, the untitled Michael Sam project has been postponed, allowing Michael the best opportunity to achieve his dreams of making the team. OWN President Eric Logan said in a statement, OWN is about elevating and empowering people to achieve their best. Now, you tell me, how is OWN's involvement here going to empower or elevate Michael Sams? All it would be is a distraction, so he's a hypocrite. It is clear that we, along with the world, recognize the opportunity that Michael has at this moment. We will continue to support him in his journey to earn a spot playing for the Rams. Well, why is the only reason the world would even know this man's name is the fact that he has made his sexual orientation a cause celeb.
Yeah, and to empower him, money empowers a lot of people. You want to pay me to follow me around? Empower me away.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we've said is true, but the guy is now a household name. He is about to have his own TV show. He's going to make out pretty well on this whole deal. He just doesn't care about the Rams or the NFL. He's looking out for himself, which, I mean, he's putting football secondary, but he's probably going to make more doing this than he would if he just got drafted by the Rams in the 7th round and got cut.
Well, here'd be my big issue if I was the Rams. If he wants to bring a camera in to watch him go through his stuff and everything like that,
right?
What if they edit that in such a way that and then he gets cut, but they edit it in such a way that they catch all of his good film, all of the good plays that he makes. It catches all the great things that he does, and then all of a sudden they cut him.
Yes.
Well,
right. Of course. Yeah, here's another statement. Everybody involved remains committed to this project and understands its historical importance as well as its positive message. And that's the whole thing of the gay rights movement, is they want to project that homosexuality is a positive message and that it's historically important. I want to say this isn't historically even meaningful, and it most certainly isn't positive. I don't care how you want to interpret the situation. It's not historically important, and it most certainly isn't a positive message. Play football. You want to be a football player? Be a football player. If you want to be a gay rights advocate, be a gay rights advocate. But don't pretend like being a gay rights advocate as a football player is either historic or positive. It isn't.
I guess the issue I've always had is what does it say about our society that what somebody does in their bedroom is now all of a sudden of historical importance?
Right.
And they've done this for a while now, to where everybody that's famous was gay. You know, everybody from way back, Da Vinci and all these other people, all of them are gay. Yeah,
Yeah, I can tell you that having spent a lot of time here recently studying the rise and fall, and it's really the fall and fall of the Roman Empire, that a hugely disproportionate percentage of their leaders were homosexual. And somewhere along the way, a disproportionate number of their leaders were vicious, repulsive people. Now, should we equate the fact that the majority of the Roman leaders were homosexual with the fact that the vast preponderance of the Roman leaders were vicious? Is there that they were pedophiles, that they were mass murderers, that they got their jollies in watching other people be tortured? Both are common amongst their leaders. Are we to make that connection, or are we just to ignore the connection, or just say, one really has nothing to do with the other?
Torn on that one.
Yeah, it's one of those things that they're now trying to go back and say that, these great individuals in the past, like Da Vinci, were homosexual, therefore we ought to view homosexuality in a different light. Well, I can take the same approach and say, virtually every emperor of Rome, from the likes of Caligula and Hadrian and et al. You go through the list and you study them, and they all wanted to deify whoever their male sex toy was.
I'm not going
to say
either of those things.
Okay, and that's my point. And that's my point, is that those who are going to try to promote now going back in history and saying this person was great and they were gay, well, then you've got to also deal with this person was repulsive and they were gay.
Yeah, but this person was great and they were gay is just as bad of an argument as this person was repulsive and they're gay.
That is my point. And by the way, that was my point. That's the reason why I countered with that when Scott shared the Da Vinci revelation, is that what we ought to come to realize is a person's sexual proclivity, whatever it may be, ought not ever enter into the discussion as to what else they may or may not be good at. Welcome back to Shattering Us. We're talking about the Michael Sam's wannabe documentary. It is interesting to note that according to this article, that the Rams were unaware of the project prior to its announcement. So OWN announces that they're going to do the Michael Sam's project of his filming him in a documentary, a reality show of his experience in training camp. And when the press release comes out, oh, by the way, it turns out that Michael Sam never bothered, nor did OWN ever bothered to ask the Rams if it would be okay. What would you do if you were the Rams under those circumstances?
I feel like this would be one of those things where when you give somebody an interview and then they apply and they don't put on their resume certain things, and then all of a sudden those things come out. I feel like that's kind of what this is, because they had to have it already planned.
Oh, of course. They announced it before telling the Rams. I mean, it's like the Oprah Winfrey Network. Are you completely oblivious to the fact that the Rams is a private business? And that you don't have the right to send your cameras into a private business without asking their permission?
Well, they'd also, in that same, if it's the same article that you sent over to me, they didn't ask the NFL if they could use any of the NFL stuff.
Of course, their logos or anything else. I mean, it's completely amateur hour. It's like these guys are living in this make-believe world that thinks that everybody wants to position Michael Sam as a national hero, and that this is this great journey that the whole world needs to know about and has a right to know about without ever bothering to think. Come on, it's a football team. It's a private business.
You say it's amateur hour, but I say that whoever the PR person is for OWN, the Rams, all of them, geniuses. Because we are talking right now about Oprah Winfrey's Network.
No, it's not. It's not genius because they all failed. You think about the Rams. Aaron, during the break, you told me that why don't you share the story of why Michael Sams was drafted?
The quick summary of it is that when they were going into the late 6th and early 7th round and players were being picked, that Jeff Fisher, the coach of the Rams, called the manager and said, hey, we should go get this guy. And they did. And everybody in the room patted themselves on the back for, all everything that they've done in drafting into the team. And they were very proud of themselves for it. But
so they were looking for publicity because of the stance he had on homosexuality.
Yes, and the position that they drafted Sam in, they're proud. They're one of the deepest teams in the league at that position. He's not a player that they need. And then
no, in fact, they have two of the very best players in the NFL, including Chris Long. In that position.
Robert Quinn had 18 or 19 sacks last year. And Chris Long.
So Quinn and Long are the starters in that position. They did not pick him because that was a need for their team.
No, and his scouting report is that his ceiling is he would be rotated in on some plays if the situation was correct, and that's if he makes the team at all.
So they drafted him only for the positive publicity in the media, and now this has turned out to be a fiasco.
Somewhat, but
they've said no to the documentary.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it is interesting that everybody now acknowledges that this was all because he's gay, not because that he was drafted because he was gay. He wasn't not drafted because he was gay. In the opposite that had been presented. He was drafted expressly because he was openly gay, and they thought they would win kudos publicly for that. But then when he came in with his own reality show, they said, no, not going to do that here.
Well, and had he not been drafted, I bet you there's several teams that would at least work him out as an unsigned free agent just because.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. The next story here is the International Football Association, which is the soccer organization that hosts the World Cup. They agreed to what many consider to be bribes to host the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, and now they're saying that was a terrible idea. And now they're not blaming, by the way, the fact that Qatar is the ultimate gun runner in the world. That the death rate in Libya and Syria has gone up tenfold because Qatar is providing weapons to the mujahideen in those countries. They're saying that it was a bad idea because it's hot there. What's your reaction? Do you award somebody a World Cup and then say, that was a terrible idea, it was a horrible mistake, and you do so 8 years before the event is to take place? What in the world are these guys drinking? So the head of the International Football Association has openly admitted that awarding the 2022 World Cup to Qatar was a terrible idea, to put it in their words. And you just think of the moment for what they did. Qatar is smaller than probably 20 or 30 ranches in the United States. I mean, it's a fraction of the size of the King and Parker ranches. So are we going to give the world's largest sporting event to a ranch? I mean, my guess is that the campus that Stanford University sits on is larger than Qatar. Qatar is the largest, called the Farm in Palo Alto. It's just absolutely silliness. And you've got what is the world's largest gun runner. That country is the world's largest resource for arms to mujahideen, to jihadists, and they have absolutely no political or religious freedom. And you're going to choose to host the world's largest sporting event in that kind of a country?
I did look it up. They have just under 4,500 square miles in the country, and just over 2 million people.
Oh, boy. 2 million people. I mean, a country that's 2 million people? And that's worth giving a World Cup. I mean, the metropolitan Los Angeles is 10 times larger.
Well, it's fairly obvious that there was money that changed hands to get it to go to Qatar. I mean, there's no way they got it done without bribing.
That's correct. So I guess the issue there is we can't correct our mistake because we'd have to return the bribes.
I was just going to say that I think the funniest part about this is that this is something that's 8 years out. This isn't something that's like, like Brazil, where it's like, coming up next year or whatever it is. This is something that's 8 years out. They can definitely say, okay, Australia, France, England, Germany, United States,
right?
Countless
you know
other.
what it's like in the Qatari, Saudi Arabian desert in the middle of the summer?
I'm gonna guess hot.
I'll go hot too.
A cool day is 115 degrees. And a lucky day is when the sand isn't chiseling your face.
That sounds like a fantastic venue to watch and play soccer in.
Oh, absolutely. This story we have held in advance because there was other stories, but a naked woman who referred to herself as Jesus is now the focus of 911 tapes that have been released regarding San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick. Now, just a little bit of insight here. Police did not identify the men that made the two calls, but in the first call, a man identified himself as hotel security, and he said there was a woman in the hotel room and she was refusing to leave. She said that her name was Jesus and she don't have no clothes on, he said to the 911 operator. The 911 operator asked who the woman is visiting, and the guard says she's visiting this gentleman here. Now, I don't know if it was the room of Kaepernick or one of Kaepernick's friends, but Kaepernick was in the room. When you got a naked woman in your bed who claims to be Jesus, there's really no good outcome. At that point, I'm not sure that given ample time, you could come up with a really good explanation for that.
I would just like to point, that's actually slightly different from the story that I read about this. The one that I read is that Kaepernick was not present in the room, but the woman was saying she was waiting for Kaepernick to come back. They were saying, no, get out, and she doesn't remember any of it. The last thing that she remembered was she was smoking weed with a group of people that Kaepernick was a part of, but nobody really singled each other out, and she blacked out from drinking so much.
Well, it's not inconsistent. At the time that the security was trying to get the woman to leave, the guys that were there previously were gone. I don't think there's any question that Kaepernick and other NFL football players, his posse, if you will, were with the woman in the room, but they left the room and left her in the room, and so security came in and wanted the woman to get dressed and leave, and she said that she's Jesus and she ain't leaving.
With that comment, too, I would very much like to see either a transcript of what they were saying or a recording. She identifying herself as Jesus is really odd, and she was mentally not...
Well, this is a direct quote from the 911 tapes that were released publicly. She said her name was Jesus, and she don't have no clothes on. I mean, she's visiting this gentleman here. That's directly says, there's a young lady in my friend's bed, the caller says. She says she's not leaving until she sees him. No, he's not her boyfriend. He's somebody she wants to sleep with.
Just like Jesus. He was a big partier.
Yeah, I guess a doper and like to roll around naked.
He was also a she, apparently.
Yeah, I guess all I can say is that somewhere along the way, if you don't want your name tarnished, you ought not party and do drugs with naked women who think they are Jesus.
Yeah,
you ought to have a little better discretion than that. I'm not saying that Kaepernick did anything wrong except bad judgment.
Well, I think this is also. I talked to you about this in an email. This also speaks to what sports journalism has become. Journalism in general, really. It used to be that you had to go through, find your facts, make sure that everything lined up, make sure you didn't have anything wrong, and then you'd report it. Mm-hmm. Now it's, Kaepernick was there? Okay, we got to get this story out immediately.
No, but the story that came out immediately was accurate, which is that the police were conducting an investigation that involved Kaepernick regarding a 911 call. That's all that came out initially. And then a month later, the text of the 911 calls came out. At this point, I don't think Kaepernick has been wrongly accused. I just think that Kaepernick, obviously,
I thought it was originally reported that he sexually assaulted a woman or something of that nature.
The original story that I did read right after it happened was that people were saying that he was going to be charged with sexual assault, which then became, he wasn't even in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, because the original story that I read the day that it came out was because I'm not a Kaepernick fan and I'm not a 49er fan, so I would be naturally drawn to bad press on Kaepernick and the 49ers. And it's, the nature of being a football fan. I'm not a 49er fan because of their coach and because I grew up in Los Angeles and that's San Francisco. Is that justifiable? Of course not. And is Kaepernick probably as a really good football player? Of course he is, but that's the whole nature of fandom. And so I read the first story. The first story was by ESPN, and the details were accurate. And the details reported by ESPN said that the police was conducting an investigation. It does. One of the potential people of interest is Kaepernick, and it's about a woman in a hotel room. And they didn't go further than that. Now, there may have been blogs that came out or other news agencies other than ESPN that said that it's a potential for sexual harassment. But there's no one even now that is saying that Kaepernick sexually harassed a woman. It's just that there are certain things that are really hard to explain, and there's no explanation that's a good one.
And this would be one of them.
This would be one of them. That's really as far as I want to go with it, is that you really ought not put yourself in a position where you need to explain how that all...
Imagine how that plays out, though. Mr. Kaepernick, yes. Can you tell me what happened? Well, you see, what had happened was... it's kind of like Donald Sterling trying to explain why he's been baited into this conversation with the African American hooker. Now, I know it's not appropriate to say she's a hooker, but when you receive $1.8 million worth of trinkets to have, and you're in your 20s to have sex with an 80-year-old man, you're a prostitute. Whether or not you like the term or not, you're a prostitute.
Call girls.
Okay, well, they're called call girls. All right.
And she's very successful at it.
She must be. Yeah, I mean, it's not every day that you
probably
get $1.8 million to ply that craft.
There's probably not a lot in her craft that can make that claim on their tax return.
That's probably true. But nonetheless, when you say I was just trying to have sex with her, which is why I didn't want competition from other black guys because she was a black woman, you're not doing yourself any good in trying to justify why you said things that are come off as racist. There's certain things you just say, okay, that was a screw up. I got no excuse.
The funniest part about the Sterling thing, though, is that he's a lawyer. He knows that he shouldn't say that stuff. That shows you how off base his brain is right now.
And my whole issue with Donald Sterling, and then we'll go on to the next story here, is that what I see in Donald Sterling is I've been around, and I'm sure you guys have too, old people that somewhere along the line start to lose it mentally. My mother-in-law was such a wonderful woman. I mean, she was so sweet. I loved this woman. But somewhere in her mid-80s, she lost it. And she would have conversations with you about the elephants that were dancing outside the window. And then she would say something that was lucid, and then she would talk about how there was a marching band going by, and they were led by polar bears that were dancing. And then you just realize you want to play along with her at that point, because trying to hold her accountable for the insanity that was happening in her mind would have been abusive to her. At that point, you say, they are cute polar bears, and I love their outfits. And you just see her smile, and she was happy. And Donald Sterling has lost his mind. It happens. And we just really ought to back off and realize, okay, the guy's lost his mind. Don't hold him accountable for every word that's coming out of his mouth. He's lost the ability to think.
Then the question becomes, should somebody that doesn't have the ability to think own an NBA team?
Own one? I don't know. Manage one? Absolutely not. And when it's not funny to talk about the dancing polar bears outside of the window, then the league has an issue. So I don't have an issue with the league saying we want him to sell the team, but somewhere along the line we ought to just back off and say the guy's senile. He's lost his mind. It happens. It can happen to any of us. We'll return with more commentary on the news. Welcome back to Saturday Miss. We have an interesting story. 3 Oregon players involved in sexual assault, at least an investigation, were dismissed from the university. It is interesting to compare what happened. Here you have these 3 young men that were dismissed from the university, thrown off of the basketball team, and then thrown out of school. But yet they were not found guilty. In fact, the police said that they were not going to prosecute them for the same reasons, basically, as the Jameis Winston case, where they said that the woman's story had inconsistencies, and based upon the woman's full accounting, they didn't want to prosecute them. And yet these 3 young men were thrown off the team and thrown out of school. And yet the Jameis Winston case, same set of circumstances, maybe even more harsh circumstances, a 2-time offender for accused sexual assault, and he receives a Heisman Trophy and continues to play both baseball and football for Florida State.
He doesn't play football or baseball anymore.
Oh, I thought they took him.
They kicked him off the team.
Oh, I thought they reinstated him 3 or 4 days later.
No, he was playing baseball, and then he got caught stealing crabs, and they kicked him off the team.
But they did, and they reinstated him.
Did they? Oh.
Yeah, they reinstated him.
That's horrible.
Yep, so they reinstated. So there's Florida State's reaction, and you see Oregon's reaction. These are night and day. How does one justify kicking the 3 young men out of school when there is no trial or police investigation, and with the other case giving the man a Heisman Trophy and allowing him to continue to play and win a national championship? How do you reconcile those stories?
You can't, and if you see how Oregon handled it, in the details that come out about that, that's probably how it should have been handled with the Winston case.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also makes Florida State look that much worse in their handling of it.
It does. I suspect, and I don't know the details in this particular case, but I suspect when the woman came forward and she had her accounting of events, that the academic staff of Oregon said, we need to talk to these boys, and we need to talk to the woman, and we need to...
And we just had him drop out.
Decided to kick the boys out.
Okay.
You cut out for a second there, so I didn't catch all that.
Oh, I just said that my suspicion is that at Oregon, that once they heard the charge against the boys from the woman, even though the police were not going to prosecute them, they met with the woman and listened to her story, and then they met with the guys and said, what's your explanation? And when the guys didn't have a decent explanation, they said, then you're gone. Which is the very thing that I said should have been done in the Winston case and was not done.
Yeah, I thought Oregon handled this about as well as they could have in the situation that they were given, and it's exactly what Florida State did not do.
Yeah, and it's because, you know, there's a huge difference between rights and privilege. It's a privilege to be given a scholarship and to play on a sports team. It's not a right. You have the right to be considered innocent and the right not to incriminate yourself in the United States. But you don't have the right to continue to play on a sports team and receive a scholarship. So it looks like Oregon said, you know, we have a responsibility to protect our students here. And if it appears that these men were sexually aggressive with a student, so they're out of here. And Oregon did, and Florida State didn't.
Actually treat both students as if they're just students?
Yes, right.
Unheard of.
Unheard of, you know, and listen to what the woman has to say, and even if her testimony isn't such that the police can prosecute the case, listen to both and make a moral decision as to whose side ought you to come down on, in favor of and against.
Oregon made the morally correct choice. Florida State won a football championship at the cost of everything that happened to that girl going unpunished.
So that is correct.
I mean, and then I haven't heard very much about the original James Winston case at all. The crab leg thing comes up periodically, but that initial lack of investigation, other than us talking about it, I haven't come across a story about it in quite a while.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing that the woman that accused him, and rightfully of having aggressive sex with him, has DNA to prove that she correctly identified him, and we have subsequently discovered it was not the first woman who at that university accused him of sexually abusing her. And so the Winston case is far more cut and dry in favor of releasing him, and yet they didn't, and he continues to play. And yet at Oregon, they did the moral thing. We'll be back with Shattering Myths after the commercial break.